Good morning. Today is Monday, January 6th. My name's Anthony, and this is Drive Dive. Today's topic, I would like to talk about, in general, distractions. Now, I do believe that this conversation about distractions will also shed some light on my views on technology, but also revisit one of the earlier topics I spoke about, which was my goal of creating synergy within my life, or my attempts to do so. As I said, my views on technology, I struggle with it as a classroom teacher. I think trying to convey to students that technology is often a distraction, meant to be a very valuable tool, and tools have a purpose. So when you think about a specific piece of technology, we should be thinking about its purpose and how we use that, use a piece of technology for its intended purpose in our lives. And so one of the things happening in my school district this year, granted it's January, and so we're a few months in, we started putting these caddies at the front of the classroom. I know a lot of school districts are doing these too. And then students, when they walk in the classroom, are to deposit their cell phones in an assigned pocket, for the duration of the period, to then pick it up at the end. Now, of course, with teacher discretion, if you had a specific reason for kids to have their cell phones in their possession, maybe you're asking them to take pictures or check QR codes or something to that effect throughout the lesson, then of course you could ask them to retrieve and or hold on to their cell phones. But again, it's this idea that cell phones have a purpose. And so it's interesting to me to reflect on prior years. I recall being at a conference one time where it was a tech-focused conference. I want to say it was focused on computer science, but the keynote speaker, had some memes and things up about how essentially he felt that asking a student nowadays to show up without a cell phone, prohibiting cell phones in the classroom, he said was the equivalent of prohibiting a pencil in the classroom. And I didn't want to be, the voice of dissension in the crowd, but I was like, I don't know how I feel about that one. Again, understanding that cell phones often provide a distraction in the classroom. And so now fast forward, I guess maybe the pendulum has sort of swung the other way, where, as I said, I know my school district is not the only one implementing these new approaches or policies when it comes to cell phones. I know of, right, again, districts I've worked in, some different approaches, right? Some with the caddies, some with just kind of shutting down entirely the network in the school to, right, closing out personal devices, not allowing students, maybe staff as well, I don't think staff, but not allowing students to access the network on a personal device. It has to be their school-issued device. And then, of course, like I said, you're right, the caddies and trying to limit access to cell phones within the class period. I wonder where that keynote speaker is, on that topic at the moment, right? And so the way I put it to my students at the start of the year was, I get it, cell phones and everything, wanting to have them, but at the same time, we're putting them away because honestly, if it were, say, 9 o'clock in the morning, it's like, if you could talk to anyone, about anything at any time, that's what I said to them. I said, why would you choose me? Why would you choose math? And why would you choose 9 o'clock on Monday morning? Why would you do those things? Right? You wouldn't make those choices. And so you'd have a far better or certainly appealing option, and more appealing, for any myriad of reasons. And that's what you would choose, right? You wouldn't choose me, you wouldn't choose math, you wouldn't choose now. You simply wouldn't. And so, but that is our job, right? That is why we are here, at this present time. It's my job, it's your function, right? For me to teach math, for you to learn math, and high school graduation, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have to be able to focus on that task. Was my message. And so again, it's this idea of options. And so, right, that can be great. Options are great, but they, I think, can also be a distraction. I think there's something to be said for having too many options, too much choice, to be able to just say, no, I don't want this, I want that all the time. To be able to put this down and focus on that, or ignore this and focus on that. And so I know it's something personally that I can struggle with at times, maybe even in my professional life, right? Where of the tasks that you have to complete, I'm thinking about, right, lesson plans, grading, creating worksheets, creating assessments, emailing families and counselors and things. It's, there's a lot of those things that we need to get done, and maybe this isn't the best example, but some of those different options, like, oh no, this is far more appealing, right? So let me work on that, and then it gets to the 11th hour, and scrambling to get the other maybe less interesting, or the other more mundane tasks completed. Or in my previous life as a supervisor, where I did have multiple projects, there were certain projects and tasks, certain projects were far more exciting than, checking lesson plans, or even conducting walkthroughs, I think it's right? Things of that nature, when instead I was, really focused on referendum projects and redesigning classrooms and implementing technology, and right, things that were just far more exciting. I would at times focus on those, and let some of the other things not fall by the wayside, but certainly not receive as much attention as they should have. And so, I wonder the extent. I'm sure there's a lot of research on this, books written. I've only heard about people talking about how the impact cell phones have had on their personal lives and relationships. But it's going back to that. It's like, well, would I rather have this conversation right now, with my child, with my parent, with my spouse, or would I rather be on, Facebook having a conversation with so-and-so, or on Instagram, looking at, whomever it is I follow and what they're up to, right? There are certainly things I guess that are going to be more appealing, more entertaining. And the options too, I know this, it's been said, right? Back in my day, right? We only had 13 channels, and so on. You had to pick from what was on. I do kind of see that happening right now, like right the opposite, with my 2-year-old daughter. There are just so many options. We'll sit down, I guess, as a family, and my son's thinking that he wants to try to put on a movie, and of course, I guess my wife and I are leaning toward that as well. Letting our son pick out a movie, but then our daughter's like, no, I want to watch Blue's Clues. And more often than not, I think we've given in, and now we're trying to push back against that a little bit. But giving in, we put on an episode of Blue's Clues, and maybe even only a couple weeks ago, we were watching full episodes of Blue's Clues, or we were watching full episodes of Bluey. But maybe that's what it was. Initially Blue's Clues was pretty popular in the house, and then we were watching other shows like some Sesame Street, and Bluey, and then recently we rediscovered Blue's Clues. And so now going back to it, we haven't actually been watching full episodes. My daughters insisted that after the opening song and dance and everything, which isn't very long, maybe a minute long, I don't know the exact time, but once that's over, because the option, right? But one of the options that exists now, she wants us to rewind it. She wants us to keep going back to the beginning. She doesn't want to watch a whole episode. She wants to watch, I guess, the equivalent of like a YouTube short video, right? She just wants to watch that first minute or two, the opening songs, the opening credits. That is the most appealing thing to her, I suppose. And so she just keeps wanting to go back to that, back to that, back to that. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. I imagine it's not, right? It just doesn't feel right that she can seemingly always just get what she wants, and if maybe, I don't know, again, there must be research on it, but I guess what I'm saying again is going back to the topic of distractions, right? Having all of these options, having something that I want so easily accessible all the time does become a distraction, from and take away from the other things, I guess, that we need to be working on. And so quite candidly, at the age of 2, we're working on speech, right? And I think and practicing speech needs to be more of a focus in our household and in her life, in my opinion. And so I wouldn't mind it if maybe we watched a whole episode and then turned the TV off and got to some other activities and gameplay in the house, out of the house. But it doesn't always work out that way. So it's just interesting to me to be distracted, and I don't, initially at least, right, I'm trying to find ways to, right, if this technology is going to be there, and if it's maybe going to be a distraction, I often try to find the learning opportunities that are inherent in the use of technology. And so one example, yes, is with my daughter and with speech. I liked the idea, and still do like the idea, of having a routine, right? Even though some other maybe unintended consequences have come about come about from our use of, right, streaming services and such. But she is at least able to say things like, maybe not very articulately, or she's not enunciating, right? I mean, she's 2, but able to say things like Blue's Clues and Bubble Guppies, and she has words for, Elmo and so on. So I liked the routines and accessing technology, for those reasons, that there were these sort of learning opportunities built in. And now it's time, I think, to maximize other opportunities, right? Find other opportunities, recognizing, as I've pointed out, some of the drawbacks to how the particular piece of technology in streaming platforms maybe has some negative consequences or so. But then, another example, right? Learning opportunities inherent within use of technology. I recall with my son when he must have been 3 or 4. I know at some point reaching for cell phones and trying to play different apps. One in particular is like learning his letters and numbers and tracing them. I want to say I was using then, okay, you can be on my phone, but like we have to, use the bathroom. And so he could only use my phone when he was on the potty, right? And so using that desired option to motivate him to use the bathroom. And then it turned into, okay, well, I had to put a pin on my phone at work, I believe. So because I had a pin on, I was then able to teach him, I guess, how to punch in a pin. I said to myself, well, let's make this pin something meaningful to him. And so what I was able to do with that, again, looking to create these learning opportunities, I started to set my pin to my wife's cell phone number so that he would learn mom's number if he ever needed assistance, if he was ever stuck somewhere, needed to make that phone call, he could. So I started out with just the first, maybe 4 digits. I don't know what the minimum is on a cell phone these days, but worked on the first 4 digits. Once he got the first 4, I said, oh, today's different. Now there's another digit. And obviously then built up to all 10 digits, area code included. And so looking back, I don't know that I felt like that was much of a distraction for my son. Like streaming services, as I've mentioned, have sort of become for my daughter at an early age. And so I don't know. I do worry about the distractions and just to revisit, I guess, what I was saying earlier about the other connection, right? To trying to create synergy. It's, yes, the activities that we do or that I choose to engage in, I would hope that they fit well together and that doing one supports the other and vice versa. And that's what I reflect on a lot of my habits, my routines, and it's too easy to turn on the television and get lost in that, and then not have accomplished as much as I would have liked with my time. I'll tell myself, oh, I'm only gonna watch TV while I eat a late night snack, and then it turns out I've watched an entire 2-hour movie, and the movie's nearly over, and I'm like, you know what? I should have worked out. There's plenty of time, right? Uninterrupted time to watch a movie. It would have been uninterrupted time to do something, I guess, a bit more productive. And so those are my struggles, and that's why I chose, I think, it being Monday morning, and some of that was happening over my weekend. That's why I chose the topic of distractions today, what they might look like, how technology sometimes can be that distraction, even though sometimes it's maybe posited more optimistically or positively as options. I think sometimes having too many options as well is what creates those distractions or opens us up to focus on other, I don't want to say less important, but certainly less pressing or something less pertinent, less, I don't know, but to focus on some things where that maybe needed to wait, whereas other things should have taken priority. And so that's it. I want to get your thoughts on that one, maybe some of the distractions, what sort of distractions do you think you have in your life, and what sort of steps do you take to minimize those distractions and the impact that they have on your task completion, on your relationships, on your just satisfaction with daily life and adulting. So anyway, that's it. Thanks again. This is Anthony. Appreciate you watching. And have a good day. Good morning. It is Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. I'm Anthony. This is Drive Dive. Anyway, working on that one. So today's topic that I wanted to get into is self-care. I know there's lots of different ways to talk about self-care and self, right, being contained within the term anyway. It's going to vary from individual to individual, but I'll share at least what it means for me now, what it has meant over the past couple years, recent couple of months, and what I envision it meaning for myself, I don't know, in the coming weeks and months. And so, just to let you know a little bit more about myself and my goals and such, over the last, I think we're working on about almost 2.5 years, I have lost 50 pounds, 45, 50 pounds in that area. Probably like 47, 48, but whatever. So I was on vacation with my wife, and just before our daughter was born, and I know it's a bad habit or practice to engage oneself in, but looking around at other people, other guys who were, fit, probably younger, and probably, fewer demands on their time, and able to, dedicate then time to the gym and things like that. But I just couldn't help it. I said to myself, like, I can't look like this, right? Like, I need to look more like that. And I mean, I had looked like that prior, and I was a high school athlete, to a lesser extent, a college athlete, and I had always been in the gym, and at one point as an adult had even done a couple of bodybuilding competitions. So in my adult life, I've weighed anywhere from 160 pounds when I was on stage, participating, like I said, in those competitions, and then all the way up to 217, which when I was hitting the gym really hard, and 217, I was at least able to say I could bench somewhere around 300 pounds. I never quite got over 305. Did get 305 on the bench, but never 310, certainly never 3 plates, 315, but deadlifting like 455, 460, I think might have been my best ever. So I at least had some bragging rights to go along with the body composition, I guess, that goes along with being 217 pounds. But 2.5 years ago, I was not hitting those numbers, right? I did not have those strength numbers to kind of back up or justify being, for me, sort of at that being that larger version of myself. And so I knew I needed to make some changes, and so I got back in touch with the coach that I had used prior, when in my last maybe 1 or 2 competitions I'd worked with a coach, Joe Franco, really awesome coach. I started working with him again. Reached out and just said, hey man, here's the deal. Here's what my diets looked like. Here's what I'd like to accomplish. And so we just kind of started back at square one. And so so throughout the past 2.5 years, taking care of myself in that fashion, I've been able to lose a significant amount of weight. And so for me, that was a lot of self-care. I did and I do pay Joe $115 a month, which when I first started this 2.5 years ago, I said to myself, like, man, I don't know, $115, that's a lot of money, in my opinion, right? I think $115 in general is I mean, it's a good sum of money. But so it took me a minute to really think about it, reflect on it, and I said, well, $115 a month, I mean, I guess there are people that pay close to $115 to hire a tutor for an hour, maybe an hour a week. And I just said to myself, well, listen, if that's the help that a student needs to do well in a class, that's the help, the support that they need, they're able to go out and get it, $115 an hour, or close to, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, even any of that, still sounds like a lot to me, but the point is, you get the help that you need, right? I said to myself, somebody needs help with math, they hire a tutor. I feel like I need help with my diet, hiring a coach makes sense. And so that worked for me. I guess going even further back, right? Maybe the last 5-10 years of my life I've gone through quite a few, I guess, life changes, life events. I mean, I've been married 14 years now. It's obviously not in that 5-10 year window, but in that time, we've had 2 children. My son is 8, my daughter is 2. Our son's 8, our daughter's 2. I have, in that time, I've had a couple of bouts with unemployment. I have changed employers, whether being let go, and both times not really not for fault, not for anything I did wrong, but for budgetary reasons and restructuring and tenure rights and all this other stuff. I don't mean to get into the specifics of it, but suffice it to say, I've had some of these life events, life occurrences that have, just I guess taken their toll on me. I'm sure to an extent physically, right? As maybe affecting me, maybe psychologically or emotionally first, influencing my routines, my energy levels, and then my inability to will myself to work out. I don't know, just spitballing here. But then obviously, then impacting me physically. And so I felt like, right after some then conflicts at home and conversations with my wife, and I guess we decided that maybe I needed help processing all of these changes and their impacts. And so for the past couple of months, I've been going to therapy. I'm very fortunate to be in a position where I have health insurance. I have access to a therapist, right, a provider. It did take some work to find one. I made a few phone calls and contacting insurance and trying to figure out who's in network, who's not. If I ended up with someone out of network, what was covered, not covered, paying for it and getting reimbursed or whatever else. And so that took probably about a month, right? Just to, getting to that point, sort of the low and kind of feeling a way about myself. I guess I'll just say that it does take, I guess, some strength, some courage to pick yourself up and start making those phone calls. And then when it doesn't work out right away, that's maybe exhausting and draining. And but I was fortunate enough to be able to then find a therapist, have that initial meeting, and comfort level and all of that stuff, the convenience, close to home, etc. So for the past few months, I have been going to therapy on a weekly basis. Took a little bit of time off, I guess, because of the holidays and such and scheduling and all. But again, it's just, I think that mantra that started in my head around the weight loss and just telling myself, get the help that you need, it was easy for me to just to put therapy in that same sort of bucket. Like, no, this is the help that you need. So those two instances and ways in which I'm getting help for myself, I think, are easier than how I envision caring for myself moving forward. And I guess the divide for me is, right, these instances, I've essentially, right, I've hired a coach. I have hired a therapist. These are people who've chosen those roles. They've chosen to operate in those capacities, work in those professions. And this is a service that they provide. That is, right, their purpose in my life, their sole purpose in my life. Right? I mean, there may be times in which Joe and I chat a little bit. He has kids, I have kids. His are older. We were talking maybe briefly about their college search at one point, and so on. And with my therapist, it's, there's some friendly banter, right? We're talking about the holidays and family, and we've spoken a bit about our respective marriages and friendships and some things like that over the past couple of months. And so there are times when it can feel friendly, but that is secondary to their primary purpose in my life, right? That's sort of the agreement, right, between myself and Joe, between myself and my therapist. It's, you are helping me, this is your role, and I'm paying you, right? Whether that's me or my insurance company, whatever, right? They're being compensated for their time. But so I think that the harder piece of self-care, and I think it falls underneath self-care, right? I'm not just myself taking care of me, but the next steps for me are to just reach out to the people in my life and ask them for their help. I think that speaking up for myself and talking with maybe my employer about my future in the district, my interest in leadership roles, and whether or not that is a possibility for me in the district, I think is a conversation that I need to have. I need to advocate for myself, and I think that piece of advocacy is the self-care, but it is difficult to, I think, have that conversation and ask my employer to essentially help me, to care for me, which I don't think is their sole purpose in my life, right? I think it's kind of like the coaching, where I'm paying a coach to provide a service. Well, my employer is paying me to do a specific job in a specific way, right? And so that can be difficult. I believe I have to have conversations at home with my wife about our relationship, and have this dialogue about how we can strengthen that relationship, and how, with the birth of our children, and how the dynamics have changed at home, and how, right, new relationships forming, new routines, practices, behaviors, etc., the good, the bad, the ugly, and how do we work together to just get to a better place. And so, right, again, the self-care is the advocacy, but then it gets complicated after that, right, where we're then engaging with other folks, other people in our lives, where that's not their primary purpose. Their primary purpose isn't or sole purpose isn't to care for me. They also have some self-care to engage in, and there's the idea that, right, like, what anything that they're doing for me in this relationship, well, I also need to reciprocate, and vice versa. And so that can get complicated, but I do think that falls under self-care, and I'm even at that point where I'm able to have these conversations with my 8-year-old and talk about and ask him openly too, right? I'm able to talk about what I need from him. I'm able to, as we're talking about different things, different events, encourage him to let mom and dad know what he needs from us, to understand how he's feeling, and encourage him to communicate all of that, and advocate for himself, and care for himself, and ask us to take care of him when he feels, if ever, that we aren't taking care of him in the ways that he expects or needs us to. And so I think all of that does fall under self-care, because there is that self-advocacy piece. Though it, like I said, it is far more challenging than simply hiring a coach or hiring a therapist. And so that, to me, is, I guess, the ways in which I have engaged in self-care. I think in order of difficulty from least to greatest, right? Again, hiring a coach, hiring a therapist, and now moving forward, maybe the more difficult part of the journey, having these open conversations with loved ones about our relationships and how we can take care of one another. So anyway, that's it. Again, I'm Anthony. This was, I don't know, maybe therapeutic, talking about self-care. I hope it's been helpful for you. Please leave a comment down below. Any thoughts on how you engage in self-care? Any other topics that you might like to see me touch upon in the future? I don't know, give us a like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good day. Alright, today is Wednesday, January 8th. I'm Anthony. This is Drive Dive. I don't know, it feels okay to start to say it that way, start off the show. Podcast, video, journal, entry, whatever this is. Today, I don't know, I haven't really thought too much about what to say other than, I don't know if this might be a topic about balance or moderation, but basically it was more inspired by the conversation I've been, or an interaction with a student of mine who, good kid, we've been, kind of making some connections and things, and chatting back and forth in the classroom, and he recommended anyway, short of the long, I think it started like he laughs a lot. He laughs a lot in class. He laughs about, silly things, comes in, that kind of attitude. You kind of, sometimes students are not the best at mathematics, right? I think maybe if you're, right, you probably say to yourself, I wasn't a very good math student, or if you're in education and you're maybe a math teacher or something, you're like, oh yeah, okay, sure. But there's some students can be challenging, right, from an academic standpoint, some maybe from a behavioral standpoint. This student is more the math struggles, right, the academic side of things. Very good kid, very cool to chat with. I know he has a job and where he works, and it's close to home, and right, I've met his family at parent-teacher conferences. A really good kid, so he comes in laughing at things, and I asked him if he'd ever seen the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, well before his time. So no, he hadn't. He looked at me like it was ridiculous and whatnot. So if you've seen the movie, comment down below your thoughts on it. But just him laughing and giggling all the time reminded me of the you're gonna die laughing sort of thing. And not that I wish any of that sort of thing upon this student, but just I wondered if it was something he would appreciate. So but then he tells me, like, have you seen Squid Games? Which I have not or had not until last night. So I did watch the first episode and part of the second. So it'll be fun later on. He's going to ask me about whether I watched it, because since he recommended it every time I see him, he goes, did you watch it? Did you watch it? I'm like, come on, man. Like, here's what I got going on. I got this, I got that. Like, what do you think? My life is like when I get home. And so I'll be able to, when he asks me today, maybe I'll just respond, do it, like I'll turn to him real quick and just go, red light, and see how he reacts or responds. Does he freeze? Or why? So that'll be fun. But the reason I think of moderation when it comes to that interaction is this. I'm often very critical of people who seem to watch everything. There are folks who, you get together recently over the holidays, and there's someone in every circle that's, oh, have you seen this? And oh, have you seen that? And, well, no, I haven't seen show A, but I've seen show B, and they have also seen show B, and they're talking about this character, that character, and oh, wait until episode. And I'm like, how is it possible that you have consumed this much content? And the critical side of me is, well, like, don't you have anything better to do with your time? Something more constructive? And I don't know if I would be so critical if there really weren't this. I think there's more envy to it, where a big part of me wishes that I had that kind of downtime to turn the brain off and consume more content. But I don't know if I really want that for myself, or if we're just somehow trained these days with all of these different options that are available via streaming apps and games on our phones and such. You just have access to so much content to consume. Articles that I read, right? Just scrolling through headlines on my Google News feed. I think then, when I was talking about distractions in a prior episode, I think I view a lot of these things as distractions, as taking away from my focus on, I don't know, my kids, my wife, my career, household chores, so on and so forth. And so whether it's me having goals and too many goals that I've set for myself, in between, like I said, family, work, home, I write Amazon product reviews, I'm doing YouTube stuff, maintaining a couple of channels, this one and one that I maintain with my son, where we play video games and such. But so maybe I just take on too much and then say to myself, right, these are the goals that I have, and other people should be operating this way too, and how dare they watch so much television. So I mean, I can be really critical, and that's kind of where a lot of my mindset is. Like, it's wrong to watch this much television. I get really hard on myself, where if I do watch television for an hour like I did last night, or 2 hours, I go, oh man, like, I didn't work out. I easily could have fit a workout in the time that I watched this show or this movie. And so again, I get too focused, I think, on being productive, on creating something. But while I do think that's important, the creation aspect of things and productivity and whatnot, goal setting and making progress, etc., it is important to have that balance. Right? We don't want to be a workaholic, but we also don't want to be, couch potato. And so I think that's the whole point. I getting together over the holidays and running into those folks who watch all this television, like, I leave the room. Like, I don't stay. I don't make the effort to connect and find that common ground and so on. But I do also recall, a couple of instances in my life where I did have these really strong connections with individuals over content that we were consuming. I remember reading a book with a friend, long, I want to say Steinbeck book, East of Eden, where we worked together and we were reading this book and just, I had a lot of interactions and, oh my goodness, this part, that part, and just talking about the story and our reactions and the characters and everything, and just having a number of really good conversations based on the content that we were consuming. And now fast forward to where I am today, talking about watching the first episode of Squid Game and the conversation, at least today, that I'll be able to have with my one student, and maybe any other students in the room who happen to have seen the first episode. And so I don't know that I can promise this student that I will commit to and watch the rest of this particular show, but I think that, again, this balance, right, is taking this time to consume some content will give me the opportunity to connect with this student in another way, and something that he'll appreciate, that I'll appreciate, and just having this conversation and that connection. And if I happen to consume more sometime between now and the end of the school year, I think, right, is it season 2 that just came out, we can then have some further conversations. But that balance of things, I don't want to get sucked into watching all of the episodes and binge watching this weekend, to then where I come Monday I'm going, oh no, like I didn't grade papers, I didn't wash dishes or do laundry or talk to my wife or work out, I didn't write any product reviews, all this other stuff, right? So I do have plenty of things on my plate that I choose to put on my plate, and so I need to ensure that at least I have this balance and engage in these activities in moderation. So really, I mean, that's it. I think moderation and balance are the two things to for me to think about, and that I'm kind of talking about here, but also connections with people that can come about through the activities in which we engage. It's okay to consume, don't overconsume, and try to use that consumption as a way to connect with other people who are into the same specific content, genres, platforms, what have you. All right, that's it. 10 minutes, almost 11. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know if there's other things I should be talking about, other content maybe you'd like me to check out, get my thoughts on. I'd be happy to record a video on any topic, any comment you leave. And if you found this insightful, please feel free to share with a friend. Consume some of this content. Oh man. Anyway, have a great day. Take care. All right. Good morning. It is Thursday, January 9th, 2025. I'm Anthony. This is Drive Dive. I'm going to categorize this one as Adventures in Parenting. Just going to talk a little bit about what this is sort of motivated by, and some different stories, how I've maybe reinforced or attempted to correct certain behaviors in my children. So I was in a workshop yesterday, sort of an induction process in my district where periodically we meet and there are different presenters, different topics. And so yesterday's was about student behavior, and it reminded me of my psychology course from my undergraduate studies, where we spoke about reinforcing behavior, and I forget the other term, but maybe correcting or something behavior, but with the idea that if I want a behavior to continue, I can either introduce a positive reward, or so that would be positive reinforcement. Give a kid a sticker, give a kid a high five, right? Something to that effect, some sort of prize, again, a reward that is being introduced. You can also do what's called negative reinforcement, which is where we then take something away that ends up serving as a reward. So I'm thinking I could take away an earlier bedtime, right? Making that bedtime later, lifting a restriction would be sort of a negative reinforcement of that positive behavior. One of the examples shared yesterday, again, we're educators, was to remove a homework assignment. I could shorten the homework or remove it altogether should a group of students, class, do well enough during the class period to say, you know what, your behavior was so excellent today, here's your reward, we're going to remove this homework assignment. And then on the other end of things, trying to curtail certain behaviors, there is the idea of the positive correction, where we impose a penalty, where we introduce to the scenario some sort of element that serves as a punishment. And then I guess negative reinforcement would be to take something away. So maybe taking away a particular privilege that they do have. So just thinking off the top of my head, student behaviors, to introduce something, maybe I'm issuing them a detention, maybe I'm emailing home, contacting their coach, so that there's some sort of penalty ultimately that gets imposed. To take something away, I might, remove a privilege and start scaling back on, you no longer get to choose where you sit. That was a choice that you had. There was a privilege that you had. I now am taking that away from you. Something to that effect. I forget the examples that were shared yesterday, but again, this idea of just different ways of promoting certain behaviors so that they continue or reoccur, and then trying to prevent or correct certain behaviors so that they don't happen in the future or don't happen as often. And I don't know, so one of the examples that was discussed, it's why made me think about my children. There was an example shared about, if you picture a parent and a child in a grocery store, supermarket, if the child sees candy, asks for candy, the parent says no, the child starts crying. The parent eventually gives in and purchases that snack, that candy bar, whatever it is, for the child. That's the scenario. And I guess the child crying, once they get the candy bar, for them, that's very rewarding. This is positioned as being very rewarding for the child. That behavior of crying out, lashing out in response to their request being rejected and denied, they cried, that was their behavior. They received this reward, which is ultimately positive reinforcement. And now perhaps that child is learning to, well, the next time I do want this candy bar in the supermarket, I'm going to attempt to cry again in order to get what I want. On the parent end, it was likewise a painful experience, or certainly a negative one, with the child crying. And I've been there, right? This moment of panic, like, oh, this is embarrassing, or, I wish my child wouldn't act this way. But my behavior then, or the parent's behavior then in this scenario, giving the child the candy bar, removed that sort of penalty or that negative aspect of the situation. My child stopped crying, right? That's being removed, which then reinforces, I guess, my behavior, right? It was that crying being removed from the situation. That's my positive. That's my reward. That is the reinforcement, but it's a negative reinforcement because that crying that negative stimulus was actually removed. So I'm thinking of certain times in which I don't even want to say guilty, because I don't know which side of the fence of this sort of stuff I'm really on, where I can't help it, right? I mean, there's a lot of psychology here from the time when I was a child and interactions with my parents that certainly have a bearing on how I interact with and raise my children. When they're crying, I can't help but try to help them. I mean, the whole candy bar, this or that, is sort of a different story, but sometimes I think really, what's the big deal? Especially when I'm talking about my younger children, right? They're different, my children when they were younger, right? I mean, they're obviously different ages now. Where my son is 8, and I feel like I can have these conversations with him. We can have more of a no, you can't have the candy bar. Well, why can't I have the candy bar? And have this exchange, and even to the point where we talk about, at times, very, very mature, I think, the cost of the candy bar, and whether or not it makes sense financially to purchase one at this particular store, like at an AutoZone where they have candy, but it's certainly pricier than it would be at, say, a ShopRite, and having some of those conversations. I might say yes if it were better priced, but right now it's just a little too pricey, so that's why I'm saying no. Yes, of course, we then at times have these conversations about our health and whether or not we should be consuming candy, etc. But when they're younger, my daughter's 2, and I mean, just doesn't have the ability yet with her speech to have these conversations. She does comprehend words like later or tomorrow, and we're working on things like, after dinner, where we're saying these things and she's comprehending them. But I'm just thinking that in the moment they're expressing a need, and I think my bigger concern or fear, right? It's less about the candy and the specific need, and more in my mind, what is the child learning in terms of how I, as the father, am responding to their needs. And I mentioned that there's some psychology here where I think for me as a child, I often felt as though my parents were not responding to my needs. And I ended up, yes, I think there's positive where I then learned to fend for myself and I guess be more independent and figure out how to get things done for myself. There's also been some negative aspects to that, right? You might say, oh yeah, independence, that's great. But then I've also, even as an adult now, I think I then have a tendency to not ask for help, to put that response to my needs that or lack thereof that I experienced at times, I put that on other people and expect unfairly, unverifiably, unjustifiably, just unsupported, right? I put this on other people and I assume that maybe they won't respond to my needs similarly, and I'm just going to do what I need to get the job, the task completed by myself. So some good and some bad to the lack of attention to my needs that I experienced as a child. And so now on the flip side, as a parent, I'm just thinking that, well, if it is a need that my children are able to communicate to me in some form, whether it's verbally and articulately, as I described my older son, my 8-year-old son, being able to do, or my daughter, who maybe can't use as many words just yet, but she may cry to communicate that there is a need, there is something off, and I just feel that I need to respond to it as best I can. If it's a candy bar, so what, right? I don't have those types of feelings, about the candy in the moment, and they're just going to learn to cry and get their way, and that may be true, but then I think there's more of a relationship building that is occurring as well, and the child understanding, in general, are my needs being tended to, not being tended to, and then there can be this maturation process of, these are now the types of needs that my caregiver will tend to, and these are the ones that they won't, and try to maybe differentiate that way. And so another example, and maybe a fun one, when my son was, I think, around the age of 3, right? This was certainly during COVID, I believe, when we were home, and my son asked me to make him iced tea. And I just remember asking him, all right, well, how do we make iced tea? I think I went to get we probably had, a powder or something in the cabinet. I go to get it, and he's telling me, no, that's not how you make iced tea. And I'm dumbfounded. I'm being told by a 3-year-old how not to make iced tea, and so I said, well, how do you make iced tea? You'll never believe this unless I tell you. And he says ketchup and water. Ketchup and water? No, that's not how you make iced tea. And he insists, and he's crying about it. He's yelling at me, and I'm sure trying to get some other things done, work related and all, and I'm getting upset, and I'm like, this is like unbelievable, unreal, and but I have at least have my wits about me a little bit enough to go, listen, this is not something that I'm going to kick and scream about with him, right? I'm going to give in, and he's upset. He's communicated this need. He wants iced tea. He believes there's a way to accomplish this and meet his need. I say, okay, man, we'll do it your way. So we get a cup out, start filling it with water. I say, you let me know how much. You let me know when we have enough water in the cup. Okay, great. That's good? Okay. Let's get the ketchup. You let me know. I'll start squeezing. You let me know once there's enough ketchup in this cup. And that's what we did. I gave it to him, shook it up. Here you go. Here's your iced tea, sir. And he needed to experience this, and it was an experience where he knew right away that ooh, we made a mistake here. This is not iced tea. And so it's so funny to me where we could talk about that in terms of this positive, negative reinforcement, positive, negative correction, etc., and analyze the situation there. But they presented two different theories. One was this SDT, which is where SDT theory, I don't even remember what it's about, but that's this positive negative reinforcement of behavior, positive negative correction of behavior. And there was another theory posited, and so for me, maybe it's one of those two theories. Again, I'm leaving out the name of the second one, or maybe it's some alternate theory. I don't know, but right, we could look at that situation and say, well, ultimately he cried about it, insisted that he knew how to make iced tea, and I gave in. I reinforced this behavior. Me giving in and quieting him down, right? The fact that he quieted down reinforced my behavior of giving in to. I can't with that. I can't put that on that moment and on my relationship with my child. I prefer to think that this was a time where he wanted to take a risk. He wanted to, and maybe he didn't know it was a risk, right? For him, it was a certainty that this was how you make iced tea. I know it's wrong, but there's this learning opportunity. There is this opportunity to take a risk and learn from the failure. Even though I already know the outcome, I recognize that he can take this risk and learn from it with very little to no harm. And so my thinking is, maybe overthinking it, who knows? But as I remind him of this story every so often, I think there's an element of not only me responding to his needs, but then there's an element of building trust. And if there's this moment where together we discovered that not he was wrong and I was right, but we did have this conversation, right? We have this goal. We want iced tea. We had this conversation, this exchange of, well, here's how I think we should approach it, and here's how you think we should approach it, and which is the better one. And maybe he learned in that moment that he doesn't always have the answers, and maybe he learned in that moment that there is someone in his life who he could consult, someone who will be there for him, someone who will support him in his decision-making process and offer their opinion and offer, right, their thoughts on whether it's right and wrong and what they might do differently. But ultimately, hey, all right, the choice is yours, man. But I'll be there to help you through that experience, and then I'll be there with you to help you correct it in the end. So I do think that there's more to it than just right and wrong and positive and negative and reinforcing. I mean, there's just so much to take into account. And there was some discussion of that a little bit, and classifying disorders and whatnot as part of this presentation, taking into account the age of the child and so on. But I'm just thinking it's also complex, and I think I see that too, in the classroom a lot, where you have some behaviors that you almost at times have to let the child fail in a way, and okay, like we can do it your way, and I will support you, but I will, should you fail doing it your way, I'll be there with you to help you figure out another. And so I don't know, I think that's what I wanted to try to talk about and share with you about some of this stuff with parenting, also connected to the classroom, and but that was the whole thing: positive, negative, behavior reinforcement and correction, and what that's meant for me, and how I think I approach my relationship building, certainly with my kids, but take my own children, but take a similar approach, I think, to that, to doing the same with my students in the classroom, helping them try to understand their decisions and ultimately, support them. So anyway, that's it. Yeah, thanks for watching. Happy Thursday. Any comments, thoughts, please share below. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel. A bunch of videos up here already. These I put on different playlists. Drive Dive, I will likely file this one, like I said, under Adventures in Parenting. And any other topics I touch upon, I put them on different playlists. Whether it's parenting, I think I labeled it mathematics education, and certainly Drive Dive. But anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one. Good morning. It is Friday, January 10th, 2025. I'm Anthony. This is Drive Dive. I have to say, this Friday, happy, right? Relieved, one, that it's the weekend, sure, coming up, a few short hours, but also that I've been able to record a video every day this week. Now, I don't know. I mean, for me, I guess it's a sense of accomplishment. I think, as I said, the main impetus for this process is to just be more productive, feel more productive. In my long 45-minute to an hour drive to work, and then the same thing back, I, at least in the morning, find the time to make these videos and get something out of the drive, and not just feel like it's a giant waste of time. And so, yeah, I'm really, really happy about that. That I put 4 videos out earlier in the week. I think on YouTube I can link them all, here in this moment, so you can go back and revisit some of those videos and topics I discussed. But yeah, I'm just, want to take that moment to acknowledge that you have to start somewhere, right? And you have to celebrate the little things. And if creating and posting a video every day for a week is it, well, then that's it. Take a moment, celebrate. But then, of course, I have this tendency to then just look ahead, right, and try to figure out, okay, that was my goal for the week, and now that the weekend's coming up, what am I trying to get done this weekend? I have this tendency to do that. What do I need to get done? What do I need to get done? As I said about maybe learning or being forced to be more independent in my formative years, there are pros and cons to that. I mean, yes, productivity in general is a good thing, but you have to find the time to relax, to rewind, unwind, to relax, to unwind, to connect with friends, family. So I have to get that. I have to get that on the list. That's usually one of the last things I tell myself I need to do. Outside of my immediate family, right? I mean, my daughter's going to come running to me, looking for that hug, looking for me to pick her up. My son, we're going to spend plenty of time together between soccer and playing Lorcana, Disney Lorcana. If you're not familiar, look that one up. Lorcana. The trading card game like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, or Yu-Gi-Oh is the other big one. That he and I will spend some time working on our decks and competing against other people. I didn't mention my wife. What are we doing this weekend? Honestly, I have no idea. No idea. Between just the kids and her side gig and some of these projects and things I'm involved in, right? We'll make the time to connect and catch up. But no specific plans. I've already told my son, like, well, you're getting the rundown for tomorrow morning. Here's what we're going to try to do. It's always, I guess, a challenge, right, to try to cram everything in. But maybe the real challenge is to break that cycle, to get out of it. I don't have the answer there for you. I haven't figured it out for myself. Or maybe there isn't anything wrong with it. I don't know. But anything wrong with my current cycle, current approach, but got to figure it out. Like, I want to be able to work out tonight, tomorrow, Sunday, because I wasn't able to fit it in at all during this past week. I paying attention to my YouTube channel. I upload the video but then the thumbnail is just AI generated. Sure, it's auto generated, right? YouTube picking a random screen to pause on, and then you get to look at my face, caught in what appears to be an odd expression, but really just in the middle of saying a word, or maybe it's this face. I don't know, but later on, then come up with a thumbnail, generate a thumbnail. I do need to work on descriptions, so that was actually something that I looked up this morning. Quick Google search, goals for a YouTube channel, and those are some of the things on it. Posting content regularly, generating thumbnails and good descriptions, and so those are some things that I do need to work on, and I just do it in stages. So I might post the video really quickly without the thumbnail, without the description, and then I have to fill in some of those blanks. So yes, it's an accomplishment. I'll celebrate that. This is the 5th video this week, one every day that I've posted. But then there are next steps, right? I do need to work on those thumbnails and descriptions. So there's there always seems to be something else. Do I keep it short and sweet? Do we cut it off there, right? Take a moment. While yes, there are likely going to be other things you need to work on, make sure you take a moment and celebrate. So I think that's it. This is an accomplishment enough for me for now with regards to this channel. Set your goals, find the time, make the time, right? It may seem like you don't have the time, but if you have a commute like me, that's at least one solution, one spot of time, one chunk of time where you can start a YouTube channel. Yeah, good enough for me. Hope you enjoyed watching. Please check out my videos from earlier in the week, other content on my channel. Leave a comment down below. Looking forward to engaging with you, the audience. Anything you want me to touch upon next week, any questions you have for me, I'd be happy to add that to the list of things I dive into on Drive Dive. Contemplate, on my 45, on my long drive, contemplate my long drive, and put some thoughts out there for you. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Let's get after it. See ya.